Hey everyone, welcome back to another one of my videos. Today I'm going to be getting a little out of my comfort zone and attempting to do a recreation this time around. I will be recreating the Beast at Kings Island in Mason, Ohio, which is the world's longest wooden roller coaster. So let's not stall any longer and get right to it. Using Fusion 360, I managed to design some custom trains for this coaster. They are compatible with the CDX/LEGO building system, so I can just easily pop them on the CDX trains. Besides planning out the layout, the first thing I did was actually paint these cars. The real-life Beast trains has this really cool red to yellow gradient, which is something I really wanted to replicate. I started painting them using an airbrush, but I eventually just decided to use some markers instead. I'm going to finish up painting the two orange cars, and actually start working on the layout. So after taking down Kaleidoscope, which was my last model roller coaster, I immediately start planning out where the Beast is going to go. For most of my coasters, I like to physically place down support pieces to plan it out, and I'll do the same for the Beast. I start by placing down supports for the brake run and station. From there, the train goes into a turnaround, which does a little S-bend before it goes into the first lift. After an extremely long climb to the top, you drop down into a tunnel with some interaction with the other train as it goes by into the brakes. From the tunnel, you go into a upwards left turn, and then into a drawn-out hill. The hill drops down into a little valley, and then rises back up into a right-hand turn. From the turn, you reach a long covered straight track section before dropping down to the right. From there, you go up a little bit, then reach the Beast's second tunnel, which is decently long. The tunnel does a 180 before doing a little drop and rising up again. From here, there are a lot of turns into very long, drawn-out drop sections. These sections gain a lot of speed, and it gets really intense when the train reaches the long straight track section before the second lift. After climbing the lift, the train does a large downwards left-hand turn into a very drawn-out drop, and then reaches the climax of the ride, which is the final helix. This element is super intense, and is probably one of the best elements found on any coaster. Then the train rolls by the first drop and goes into the brakes. This is how much floor space this one coaster takes up. However, the layout is not perfect. Using Google Earth, you can see some inaccuracies in the angles of that back end section, and the second tunnel is way too close to the straight track portion before the Beast's second lift. This is why I like to physically plan out my coasters before building, because I can always change something if something goes wrong. Let's start putting these support pieces together. So right now I'm going to work on the station, the turnaround, and the first lift. The Beast is a very intimidating project, so to make it more digestible for myself, I'm going to be splitting it up into modules. For the first module, I'm going to be connecting the most complicated parts of the ride, which would be the two lifts and maybe the station. I'm thinking about getting a little fancy and putting working gates in the station. At the bottom of the first drop is the tunnel. I do want to add tunnels to my version of the Beast, but I definitely don't have enough brown Lego pieces to build all three sections. So I'm planning on actually using cardboard to act as the walls of the tunnels and as the walls covering the final helix. But I still don't really know what I'm going to do for that covered straight track section. I'm going to take a little break from building the sections and work on the trains a little bit. Now that the orange paint has dried, I can now give some black paint to the seats. If I want to connect the two lifts together, I need to build this middle section right after the first drop. I'm really excited to put in the two chain lifts so I can actually test the trains. Since the Beast's two lifts are really close to each other, I didn't have any problems hooking up the lifts with motors. The cords that come with the EV3 are really short, but since the two lifts are in close proximity with each other, I managed to actually connect them without trying to stretch the motors using axles and gears. The fortunate placement of the lifts and other factors like how low to the ground the coaster is made me realize that building the world's longest wooden roller coaster is actually possible. I was always worried about running out of pieces, but since the coaster is a terrain conforming coaster, I don't really need to use that many support pieces. I even have some sections of the ride just being a plate off the ground, so I don't even need to use a support piece there in the first place. Another thing I did was being really conservative on where I put the beams on the lifts. I would only put beams on every other connection point, so the spaces between the beams are a little larger than having them on every single open stud. And it's still aesthetically pleasing and looks like a wooden coaster. I will be sacrificing a little bit of the strength but it's not like the beast goes that far off the ground. The beast in real life sticks to the ground level and never really goes above the trees, besides the 2 lifts. Its highest point is 7 of the support pieces off the ground, which is nothing close to my tallest model roller coaster, which was, I believe, 21 support pieces tall. Right now, I'm finally putting in both of the lifts and eventually hook them up to the EV3. With both the lifts connected together, I can now start building each element one by one. I use the exit and entrance of the 2 lifts to pinpoint exactly where the other elements are going to go. Now that both the chains are in, I should give it a little test before moving on. Since I'm using EV3s, I can actually slow down the motors so that the chain lift is more realistic to how it actually is in real life. One more detail I'm going to add are these little decorative bits that cover up the motors. They don't really do anything structurally, but they're just there to look good. Let's clear up the workspace a little bit by removing all these temporary planning supports. With that out of the way, let's put in the station and the turnaround section. But first, I'm going to move it back a little bit just to give me that extra space. So I put some supports back in, and now we can actually start connecting them up. The beast station and brake run in real life is slightly slanted down so that the train will always want to roll down into the lift. So by putting in a combination of bricks, I managed to get a pretty gradual slant downwards. So let's now actually connect it up. And now we can finally put some tracks on and get it ready for a test. This test is really just to make sure the train can make it over the lift. So with that out of the way, let's expand the layout and do the first hill. From my experience riding the beast, the top of this hill has the chance of actually ejecting you from your seat. It wasn't airtime from the forces, it was more airtime from the coaster's jank. However, I think that Kings Island may have unintentionally got rid of this surprise when it recently retracted this section of the ride. Speaking of retracts, I guess I'm recreating an older version of the beast. With the retracts, Kings Island also reprofiled some parts of the ride, like the first drop and the turn into the covered straight track. However, I don't really think it matters since the beast didn't really change all that much. The part I'm building right now is one of those reprofiled sections. Instead of being just a flat turn like what I just built, it now has a little drop before turning into the straight track section. With that done, let's give it another test. From that test, I noticed that the train is going a little too fast, so I may in the future extend the chain lift to go further down the first drop so that the train will start off with a little less speed. I went back over to the station and I'm going to start building the brake run. The beast brake run is built right next to the first lift, so I just connected the brake run supports directly to the lift structure. Then I made sure to continue the slope all the way to the end of the segment. Lastly, I added another one of those slanted supports to make it look a little nicer. And I made sure that the brake run had enough clearance for the train to make it through. The last section I worked on for this video was the cover straight track section. It's a good stopping point since it basically marks the halfway point of the layout. When I rode the beast in real life, this section is kind of a pace killer since the train gets hit hard with trims here. As of recording this section of the video, I got another chance to go to Kings Island and experience the beast again. I was always wary about the retrack, but from that trip, I had one of the best experiences on the beast, like ever. I definitely noticed some light floor airtime on the reprofiled sections, and thought that the beast was running much smoother. My only gripe was that the trims were hitting especially hard, and for some reason one of the lights were on in one of the tunnels. But overall, I thought that the new beast was a great improvement from how it was running before. Since that section is complete, let's do the final test of the video.